What's up, everybody? We're here for the SDR Hotline. Woo, 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 woo. Sorry, I'm so excited. We have Ashely here from Chili Piper. Ashely, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I really just don't know why I get so excited about just like chatting with you. I feel like we had such an amazing conversation. Was it like a week or two ago? And so I felt like it was so important to bring you on and just to like give you a spotlight and kind of just like, create a space for you to share a message that I thought was so meaningful. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited, and I'm glad that you wanted to have this conversation, and it's important. So yeah, I'm super stoked.
All right, awesome. So let's say just to start off, would love if you can maybe like just give an introduction of yourself. Like, who are you? What are you doing? What do people need to know about you?
Yeah. So my name is Ashely Zagst. I'm currently an SDR at Chili Piper, and prior to that, I was on the marketing side of things. I worked at various tech organizations. I was head of marketing at Bravado prior to moving over to the sales world and landing at Chili Piper. And yeah, I was born in Texas, little Tex-Mex girl.
Yes.
And and prior to getting into the tech industry, I was a professional dancer. So I've lived a lot of life and had a lot of life experience. So yeah, I don't know. Outside of that, I love anything that's outdoors. I surf, I snowboard, I run.
Yeah, makes sense why you're in Oregon. So that's an outdoor place.
It's true.
All right, awesome. So today we have a set of questions. Of course, there's going to be audience participation. Fingers crossed, right? But for this first question, right, like what does it mean to be an other in sales to you?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of notes, so that's what all that rustling is. I am to be an other in sales. I think it's like, so if you ask anybody like what their thoughts are about a sales professional, like the general consensus is typically if you ask them to describe what a salesperson looks like, it's going to be this like white dude who's an ex-jock. If and typically when you look at job descriptions, that a lot of them are, the language is around like, gritty and hustle and never take no for an answer, prefer ex-athletes, like that kind of stuff. So when you're not that, you're another. When you walk into a room and nobody looks like you or sounds like you, or you're another. And I think, things are changing slowly. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to get into sales. And I know we'll probably talk about that, but
yeah. I'm curious, like, just because you brought it up, like what brought you to sales to begin with?
So like I said, I worked for Bravado for 3 years. I like helped build that company. And then, while I was there, one of our missions was to champion diversity in sales. And so I like really dove headfirst into that. It was really important to me and I was really passionate about it. I got to meet a lot of incredible sales professionals and, a lot of them who were others, they were women, there were people of color, LGBTQ people, and like, or any cross section of those. And I just started to think like I'm talking a lot, right? Like we are talking a lot about what needs to change and how it's important for there to be representation in leadership. Otherwise, it's not a really attractive position for another to get into. And so I just like eventually there were a lot of moving parts and other factors that played in, but like, yeah, eventually I was like, I want to be a part of the change I wish to see in the world. So I'm going to be in sales and I'm going to work my way up to leadership. I'm going to be representation and I'm going to throw the rope back to people who may not think that this is a career for them, because it can be.
Definitely 100%. And I think there's something that you mentioned here about, like I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, creating a space, like cultivating a space where the others can fit in, right, and be included. Thinking about the experiences that you've had, I'm also curious as a manager, right, of SDRs, like what are the ways in which you've seen leadership or management or even team members really cultivate a space that is allowing of this otherness, right? Or even on the flip side of that, like what have you seen that's deterred from feeling included as somebody who might identify as an other?
So I see this a lot, and actually Madison Butler just posted about this recently. And the idea of, and I have talked a lot about this as well, the idea of creating a safe space, and that's sort of nebulous, that idea. But I think as long as it's safe for somebody to show up, it's safe for somebody to show up and be who they are and not feel like they have to cover. So there's this concept of covering, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody does it, right? And like that's something else that maybe we'll touch on, but like everybody has a diversity story. There are many dimensions to diversity. And so Jen Brown, who's a dear friend of mine, this is her life work, and this is what she does. She goes into organizations and helps them um, build more diverse teams and build more space in leadership for diversity, and understanding how that's going to impact their business goals. And so this idea of covering is like, I have the definition written down. It's
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, tell me more about this. I'm learning.
it's downplaying a known stigmatized identity. So and so that what I'm talking about when building these safe spaces is allowing your people to come in as they are, like come as you are, and you don't get to dictate how much of themselves they bring to work and how much they leave at home. So like, I don't want to have to cover the fact that I'm queer. I don't want to have to cover the fact that I'm Latina. I want to be able to be proud of those things because that's part of my authenticity. And this could be in various ways, right? Like I just saw, I think recently somebody posted an interesting post about her tattoos and like working in a place where she's not having to hide those. And like, I think once upon a time people were concerned, and maybe still now in some places, but there's like this concern that you're not going to be able to get a job if you've got tattoos. And right, so like you're going to literally cover those because you're afraid you won't get a job or keep a job, right? There's also covering with like within advocacy, right? So like if you see something happening and you don't feel safe to stand up and say something about it, that's also a form of covering. And I bring all this up because it's exhausting. Like when you have to think so hard about what you're going to say and do and be in your place of work, which is where we spend the majority of our time. And granted, now we're all at home doing it, but like still same thing. And it takes away from you being able to do your actual job. So then of course you're like less productive. And
Yeah. Thank you for sharing these pieces because like as you were talking, I thought about I think there was something that you mentioned to me in the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago that really like inspired the thought of why not have this conversation with like a larger audience. And I think it points to this part of covering, right? So you mentioned being a queer Latina. And so one part of this is it's hard for me to say this because I'm like a little bit of ashamed of myself of the biases that I held in the past, like being a Black woman. I honestly, for the longest time, thought like, oh, I had it the absolute worst. And it wasn't just the thought that was problematic. It was like what that thought led to, which was, oh, so therefore I'm not able to hold as much compassion for other folks because like they don't wear their diversity on their skin, like literally on their skin kind of thing. And so you would, there was something you'd mentioned around like being queer and almost like having like, there's that question of like to cover or to not to cover. Right. So just wondering if you'd be open to kind of sharing about that experience and seeing what you're observing or what you're living, only if you're comfortable though.
Yeah, totally. So I am very comfortable and I am very out, and I've never felt like I needed to cover that, but I will append that with I've always lived in very diverse places. So New York City,
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco, like that's where I've worked. And so like I've never really felt unsafe being very open.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not the case for everybody. And so that gives me, I'm in a place of privilege with that. And I think, you know, when given the opportunity to sort of share that part of myself, like I'm happy to do it because I know other people aren't and don't feel safe doing so. And so because I have found myself in positions where I can, you know, share this about myself and be open and maybe open other people's minds without fear of penalty, it means that I'm maybe breaking down a little bit of a wall for somebody else to come behind me who was more fearful. I mean, I had a job interview when I first moved to Portland. I had a job interview, and I didn't know this at the time that this was an inappropriate question, period. But I was asked if I was married and had kids or anything, and I at the time had a fiance, and I was like, no, but I have a fiance, and I don't plan on having children. Like I didn't realize how inappropriate that question
Yes.
was. Like,
illegal it is? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Don't ask that ever.
Yes.
But anyway, then they assumed it was a man, and I said no. She and I are getting, you know, like I just on the spot instantly corrected the person interviewing me, and it was in that scenario it was no big deal. They quickly were like, obviously, like, oh my gosh, I'm so, you know, apologetic and like whatever. That was a bias that they have that was now revealed to them, and I felt safe to do that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that's amazing because and I think it's, you know, it's a fortunate experience to be able to have been in environments that were what's the best way to put this? Just like open and welcoming, you know, like it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like, or even like, not say like, so what, right. But like, all right, cool. Like next question, like, let's get into it kind of thing. Recognizing that not everybody's going to have those experiences. I'm wondering if there's any kind of like tips or tactics, right? Or any ways that you're looking at like a company that you're about to join. What are things that are going to be most valuable to you? In understanding that like not every place is going to be as accepting, right? And as, I guess, compassionate and allowing in that regard.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So this was something that was like really important for me, especially recently in my most recent job search. And, you know, I like took a cue from Amy Bolus. I made my scorecard. I had like all my check boxes that were heavily weighted, things that I was not going to budge on. And that's definitely one of them, right? Is this, I think Brooklyn just posted this question of like, how can people go beyond lip service, right?
Yeah.
I think there's so much of that, especially recently, of just a lot of words. Is that an animal that you just?
Yeah, sorry, she's crying, and I was like, "This is Luna, everybody, my mini dachshund."
Oh my gosh, she's adorable.
She is, but yeah, she's like needing of love right now.
Feel that. My dog would probably be doing the same thing if she wasn't completely PTFO right now.
I wish she was.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lip service. There's a lot of language on websites, and there's a lot of like social media posts about, you know, this and that and the other, which is all great, and it's movement in the right direction. I fully support it. And there needs to be action associated with that.
Yes.
Intention does not change people, and intention does not build better organizations. And that is a quote from Jennifer Brown. And it is like something that I have held on to for so long because I actually at one point like was told many times like assume positive intent, right? And exactly. And I actually like, so in the book White Fragility, it talks about how damaging that assuming positive intent is, because it basically prioritizes and privileges the aggressor in the scenario, and it demeans and like diminishes the actual impact of the action. So that's like the negative side of it, but like actions speak louder than words, right? We all know that. So long-winded answer.
You're all good.
When looking for these organizations that are actually putting up and, or, you know, and like, you know, walking the walk, it's things like having, you know, leaders on the team that are diverse. I mean, I don't think she knows this, but one of the check boxes for me was female leadership, and so Alina, being a co-founder of Chili Piper, was one of the reasons I chose to go to Chili Piper.
Yeah. I was gonna say, my boss is a black man, and this is my first time working. His name is Willie Pearson. My first time working for a black man, and I'm like, or a black person in general. I've never been in an organization where I could look up and see somebody like me, truly. So like that in itself, right? Like, I mean, seeing it and then also being able to resonate with each other at a deeper level. And have that understanding there. It's like, wow, I can actually just do my work. And the covering piece, I haven't come across that concept until today. So I'm like, yeah, like I really don't have to, you know, muzzle or blanket myself to feel as though I fit in.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
I'm happy to hear that you're in a good place, girl. What's up? Yeah. But yes, yeah. So I mean, I kind of interrupted, but like you were mentioning Chili Piper, like, you know, like where it's a female co-founder or woman co-founded company. Sorry, you hear my dog squeaking in the background. But like you know, what are maybe some of the other pieces of, you know, being at Chili Piper where you're like, wow, like this is yet another affirmation that I'm in the absolute right place for myself, like outside of just like having that the woman-led company.
Yeah. So I had the privilege and the pleasure of meeting and working with Michael Tuso over a year ago. He made some content with us at Dreamforce, and I mean, immediately I recognized this just like compassionate human being. He was really dedicated and committed to the learning and development portion of the sales organization. And, you know, I got that from him. And then connecting with him and then following him, and, you know, he's out, he's open. He actually not that long ago was on a webinar about selling while LGBTQ. And some of this stuff was brought up. And so just knowing that not only that he was there, right, but that also he feels supported enough in this organization to be open and to be who he is and to be a leader, and to be focused on this team and growing this team. And that says a lot. Like that alone says a lot about just the type of organization that this is, right? So taking a look at leadership and not just the apparent diversity, right, of the things you can see, but also the actions that are being taken and the things that are being talked about. Another thing that was like really beautiful was in my interview process when I spoke to Nicholas, the CEO and co-founder. He asked me about my pronouns on my LinkedIn profile, and not out of like, it was like a genuine curiosity. And I shared why I have those. And for all of you who may be wondering why certain people have their pronouns on their LinkedIn profiles, it's a way to show allyship for the trans community by normalizing sharing your pronouns. And it seems to some like it's like, why do you need to do that? Like, I can look at you and see that you're a woman. But it's not that easy for everybody, right? Like, and some people can pass. So we talked about this concept of covering. There's also the concept of passing. And what you think you might see and the judgments you make based on what you see in front of you. For example, when that one person who interviewed me asked if I had my male partner or whatever, like he made an assumption based on what he saw. And so assumptions can be at really, it's like at minimum awkward and uncomfortable, and at worst dangerous.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's normalizing the conversation about, and then like providing space for, again, because I can do that without penalty, right? Like my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a woman, the end. For a trans person, it's not that easy. And so by helping to open those doors and create that space and create that awareness and start the conversation and again normalizing that, that's why I do it. And I was able to share that with Nicholas, and it was a really beautiful conversation. And like that was just another signal, like huge signal to me that I was like, this is
the signal piece is key, and also like another I guess like vulnerability. I feel like ashamed has such a negative connotation to it. It's just more so like an awakening, an enlightening moment when we had our conversation and you shared the piece about the pronouns. Like I said, I've been that person who's like, why do we need that? Like, right? Because I didn't understand like the context, right? Or the significance where it's like, all right, this is not really about me at all, right? This is really about like creating a space where we can truly be our, like, we can be the keepers of the people around us, right? Whatever that means. And also like, and make it easier for them. So why would you not do that? So thank you so much for sharing that. Cause that's, I promise you, like I had this, I'm like, y'all, Ashely is amazing. Cause like I just had like, we booked time for 30 minutes, talked for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I walked away from that being like, wow. Because, you share things like it challenged, what you shared challenged my perspective, like challenged my assumptions, but you do it in such a way where it's not like, all right, I'm a terrible person by any means. It's just more like, all right, like here's like kind of what you need to know to be able to access like the significance of this. So that's just so beautiful. And I appreciate you for just, being who you are. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I mean, I think that's part of the work is for those of us who can be open and vulnerable. And like I said, that's a privilege that I have. And so I take that seriously. And I think it's, and I don't think people are inherently bad and like don't want to be open to having their minds expanded or, like they're, so it's, when we are able to have these conversations, that's why it's really important because, maybe people you just didn't know, right? Like,
yeah. 100%. So this like brings us to the next question I have here, which is like, how can colleagues or managers, right? Just the people around, we talked about leadership a little bit, but even on the peer level or one level up, like how can we encourage a place where everyone can feel embraced?
I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to listen and to really hear the people around you and then speak up. Like, I think, the Ashley Early and Casey Jones, they have the Other Side of Sales podcast. They recently did the State of Sales survey. And I think it said 84% of sales professionals have witnessed or experienced discrimination. That is none of this is surprising, right? But it's just
none of it.
So shocking. And so, like, if you, again, this is all predicated on safety. And if you do not feel safe, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you do, and you're in a position where you can speak up without penalty, do so. I mean, if you hear a racist remark and your coworker of color is next to you and stand up for them. That's and it doesn't have to be, none of this has to be aggressive, right? It's just asking questions or maybe suggesting that, like, if it's like a dumb joke, like maybe we don't make jokes like that. Or, I mean, I don't know. There's getting into the tactics. I think is too in the weeds. But like, yeah, I think listening, hearing people, and then if possible, being willing to stand up for those who can't for themselves. And an example that I gave, I can't remember. I think it was on that call that we were on, and I don't know if I think he's watching this, but my colleague, like he showed to me that he had not only listened to me, but heard me when I had mentioned a few times that like, I learn differently. Than other people. Everybody learns differently, right? And so I struggle when somebody just like slacks over text about how to do something. Like I can figure it out, but it takes me a minute, and especially if it's like a complicated process. Or maybe it's not complicated, but like it's just reading things is not the easiest way for me to just like catch something.
Yes.
I'm a kinesthetic learner, just a practice answer, and so I learn by doing. And in lieu of that, because we're on Zoom all the time, visual cues are the next best thing for me. And so he took that to heart, and one day was like, I don't know, explaining some way to like do something more efficient. And I was like, cool. And the next thing I know, he sends me a video of that actual thing. And again, I don't know if I think maybe he's watching, maybe he's not, but Alex, thank you. I don't know if that was like, if you know how important that was for me, but like it just showed me, again, signaled to me that it felt good to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Alex is on, I would love to hear like how to connect the dots, because so I manage sales development reps. I'm a kinesthetic learner as well, and so if I can't actually write it down, like I have to do something with my hands in order to etch it in, right? So visuals is the next best thing. That's how I learn. So like that's how I actually coach up my reps, right? So rather than try and type everything, make a drip video, send it out, and then also like I'm like over time I'm like, wow, we've now accumulated an entire curriculum of like visual content. Like this is amazing. So like Alex, you a real one.
And like that's one of the wonderful things about Chili Peppers. All of our trainings were recorded. A lot of our onboarding stuff was like a lot of videos mixed with this, and it's just like it was clear that there was some thought process behind the understanding that people learn differently. And that is in another dimension of diversity. So
yes. Yeah, I just had a call with one of my reps today, and what they shared with me is that they're like, hey, I learned, they had clued into something. They're like, I'm a little bit slow, I'm falling behind on my activities, but I've always been kind of slow. And they shared a story of how like when they were in school, they had actually been like I don't know if it's a plan or a program or whatever it is, but they were allotted more time on standardized tests, right? Given the fact they learned differently. And so, but he had not mentioned that to me until today, where that exact story. And I was just thinking back to when he had shared with me of, he would have to take the entire time to learn, like the entire time to take that test. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like really, I was like, that makes so much sense. And I was even thinking to myself, like, I wish I had asked that much sooner. And at that point in time, we can actually start having a conversation that resonates more on both levels, right? Like I have a better understanding of like what's required for him to be successful, right? Or a better understanding. Because if I meet this person with like the way I would meet another person, it's going to be a mismatch, right? And then also on the other side of this, like ensuring that people are engaged, right? That they're fully supported and that they can feel confident and comfortable in the role. And a lot of that is going to be like me taking the time to like not make assumptions. And as you mentioned, just to listen. I'm sure there are folks who are like wondering, like, like for me, here, I'll give an example. For me, it's been difficult. It's been more of a challenge. It's easier now to like advocate for myself, right? To share, hey, like here's something that I struggle with. Like here's something that I'm challenged by. And here's what I've seen work out well. Like, can we partner together on finding maybe a rhythm or a process that works really well given this piece here? What do you think? Or is there any advice you would have for folks who might be unsure of like how to advocate for themselves, or even if they have like the ability to advocate for themselves, or if they think it's even worth it to advocate for themselves?
Well, one, I think it's always worth it to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't know, no one else is. And I mean, that's a tough one because I I think it really depends on your leadership and your comfortability. But I think if you can just ask questions, and I think it's important to find, I think this is where mentors and sponsors are really important. So, and they're different things, right? And I think you should probably have both internally, like in your organization, and externally. And having somebody who can be a sounding board for you and help direct you, and maybe, you go to your external mentor, with questions about this, like advocating for yourself in a specific way at work. And then at work, having a sponsor, somebody who is like, that's your advocate. That's somebody who's going to speak up for you and also help you speak up for yourself. And I know that it can be really hard when you're in a new role, when you're at a new company, when maybe you're in a entry-level position or a lower-level position. All those things sort of add on to this sort of like self-doubt or that vulnerability factor. And I think you and I talked about this too. If you're not comfortable advocating for yourself for whatever reason, and you feel like if and when you do, it doesn't really make much of an impact, or things don't change the way you think they need to. And one, like, I think you said it, like, vote with your feet, right?
Yo, that's gonna be my tagline from now on.
No, if you aren't comfortable and you don't feel like you can be vulnerable with the people around you in your organization, I'm not telling people to go quit their jobs, right? But like, really do some evaluation on like how worth it is it to stay in a place where you don't feel like you can advocate for yourself, where you can't be vulnerable, where you can't show up. Maybe, and again, everybody's situation is different. And if like it really is impossible for you to not leave that because you need the money, you need the, whatever, like I get it. Everybody's situation is different. But again, like weighing, is this paycheck really worth the like feeling in the pit of my stomach, this like negative thing,
Yes.
And when it starts to like really negatively impact you on a daily basis because you can't fully show up, that's also impacting your work product. Like, let's be real. So you're probably not doing the best job anyway.
Yes.
So
yeah. Yeah, no, I love it because I was sitting here and I'll be real with y'all. I love me Brooklyn Nash so much. He's like, hey, listen, can we like maybe include some like sales tips, tactics? And I feel like the one here that I feel like is the main one is advocating for yourself, right? And being in an environment where you are empowered to advocate for yourself is a potentially underrated like skill.
yeah.
Especially within sales development, especially within sales. I'm probably sure everywhere, right? But like my experience really is in sales development and sales. But like I feel like especially one of the things that I've heard more and more is like people coming in and feeling experiencing imposter syndrome, right? They're like, all right, hey, like wow, there are all these people who are in my onboarding class who are experienced. Like at Gong, for example, there are folks who came from being account executives and they're coming in as sales development reps. So they're highly skilled, highly experienced. And there's also folks who are coming from a non-traditional, like a non-sales background at all. And so those folks who are like, wow, this person has 3-4 more years on me. They know all the tools and all the systems. And it's like, yes. And here it's not to say that you can't get there. It's just a matter of understanding where you are and where you are going and how can your manager, how can your peers, how can this company support you in that journey towards, progressing. So, rather than it saying, all right, hey, like I'm not good enough, right? Or I'm not getting things and there's something wrong with me, or I don't have the experience and internalizing that, really taking that time to say, all right, I don't have this experience. Here's where I could potentially see some gaps, or some things or hurdles that I'm going to come across. And like, I would really love to partner with you, manager or peer or whoever else it is in the organization, to help speed up my learning. Right. And the whole thing is progress, not perfection. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Tidbit dropped. Thank you. All right. So let's see. Anything I'm trying to say, or how about this? I know you mentioned listening as one tip, but this might be my last question here, unless anybody in the chat wants to throw something out, or if there's something important you want to talk about, Ashely. Again, for me, I'm always curious, like, how can I be a better manager for all the folks, right? Because like, I was like, I want all the kinds of folks, all the different thought, whether diversity means like your skin or your orientation or the way you approach life, the way you think, whatever else it is. But like, what do you think is really necessary for leadership to possess in order to really be able to support that vision of having a diverse workforce?
Well, again, like I said, action over intention, right? Impact over intention. And so I think the first, it's first step is to say, like, we want to prioritize this and we want to build this safe space for anyone and everyone. But then you have to put up or shut up, and you have to actually put those things into play. And whether that's employee resource groups, whether that's diversity, equity, and inclusion training, like, understand that you have blind spots. We all do. And it's hard to try to fix something you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it's really important to have kind of a third party come in and help reveal those, essentially. And like, if you're willing to do that, like, self-exploration as a leader, as a manager, as a, like, just turn it in and do some self-reflection and maybe find some help to do that, because, like, again, it's hard to know what you don't know, and it's hard to uncover your own blind spots. And that's why listening is so important, because if somebody reveals something to you that is revealing a blind spot that you might have, I feel like one way to respond to that is like, oh no, I'm not whatever, racist, homophobic, sexist,
yeah,
whatever. I'm not that.
No, I've got tons of Black friends.
My auntie's gay.
Yeah, my cousin's queer.
But so instead of sort of being defensive when those things are brought up, it's like appreciating that somebody revealed a blind spot for you, recognizing it, and then actually doing something about addressing it and maybe evolving it. Yeah. And this is an ever evolving conversation. And I am no expert. Like, I'm speaking from, my personal experience and my knowledge and understanding of this from having followed people who, like I said, this is their life's work, and they're the ones putting in the time and the energy and the dedication to making these incremental changes. It's that self-reflection piece. And I think it's hard for people because you don't want to be told, or you don't want to be told, like, or, what you just did was sexist.
Yeah.
And then, that defensiveness goes up of like, but I'm not sexist. I have a wife. I have a sister. I have a mother. Well, no shit. Of course you do. But like, it's still sexist. Like, you still did that thing. And we can have productive conversations around how to reveal those behaviors, and someone who wants to recognize that, appreciate that, and evolve that's who I want to be around anyway.
Oh yeah. I think every leader should be a requirement they have a bomb ass therapist. That's all I gotta say on that one. Yeah. I don't know if I can swear on this, but I did. Oh well. So Ashely, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you said like you're not you're not like an expert like diversity, equity, inclusion, but you are an expert on you. And just thank you for being you, for sharing from your point of view, from sharing from the things that you've learned and been impactful. My cup is overflowing. I'm so happy you came here today. I'm so happy you were my first guest. So
thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm very happy that you gave me the space to have this conversation. And yeah, I mean, let's keep it going.
Let's do it. If you know anyone, sorry, this dog has made a mess. If anybody wants to see what this child has done, yes.
Oh, no.
It's all right. That's why I was like looking around all the time. But if there is somebody that you would like to see on a show like this, like sharing a perspective that you feel would be incredibly meaningful, inspiring, whether it's for yourself or for somebody you know, let me know. I'll reach out to him or them, and we'll get them on.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you, Ashely. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful Friday. Stay safe. Oh, yeah, we'll do a little dog goodbye.
Yes, dog say bye.
Say bye. Oh, our dogs look alike. All right, Ashely, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.